good afternoon to in-house counsel from all across North America. Welcome to In-House Connect. My name is Shai Mahani. I'm the CEO and co-founder of In-House Connect, and I'm thrilled to have you here with us today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for spending your breakfast time or your lunch time with us. And special thanks to our wonderful sponsor, Conga, and our fantastic presenters today, Kyle Hankins and Derek Galvin, for putting together a fantastic presentation on the 3 ways CLM tools can help in-house counsel better collaborate with the business. I'm sure there's more than 3 ways, but we're going to focus on the top 3 ways today. So looking forward to this presentation. So this is the 24th In-House Connect event of the year. And I'm wondering, have you been with us before, or is this your first time? It looks like we have an 80-20 split. So 80% of the audience is returning, 20% is here for the first time. So that's wonderful. Welcome to the new attendees, and welcome back to the returning attendees. Okay, today's event. CLM for in-house counsel, 3 ways CLM tools can help in-house counsel better collaborate with the business. First panelist is Kyle Hankins. Kyle is a corporate counsel at Conga. His primary focus areas are the support of Conga's professional services team and the support of various commercial transactions. Before joining Conga, Kyle built and ran a law firm representing private clients in contracts, personal injury, and family law. In addition, Kyle draws upon his underlying computer science degree and previous SaaS technical support experience to provide Conga with sound legal counsel. Our next panelist is Derek Galvin. Derek is a commercial account executive at Conga, focused on helping organizations elevate their contract lifecycle management and quote-to-cash processes. He's a diligent software sales professional who thrives on helping people and businesses alleviate challenges and workflows through more efficient and user-friendly outcomes. He intently brings Conga's suite of products to market and wants to help you streamline your organization's revenue operations needs. We have a great panel today. I'm really excited. I will turn things over to Kyle to get us started.
Thank you, Shai. I appreciate it. That's a great intro. I mean, that's basically all I was going to say anyway. Let's say a little bit about how Conga, the legal team, works, just to kind of fill that out a little bit. So I'm one of 10 attorneys. We all do commercial sales, and then we all have individual responsibilities. Like Shai already mentioned, I support our global PS team, insurance-related issues, and renewals in the Americas. That's pretty much my role there at Conga. Derek?
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. So as Shai mentioned as well, Shai, great intro. My name is Derek Galvin, account executive here at Conga. So I cover our commercial space and our central team, and I work with companies ranging from 100 million ARR upwards to $1 billion, helping transform their contract lifecycle management, quote-to-cash processes, document generation, other areas that Conga can cover, but of course today focusing in on contract lifecycle management.
All right. And so we got a poll up right now, and this is just going to help us kind of tailor our comments and how in-depth we get with our technical descriptions of how we use CLM and how it helps collaborate.
So does your organization currently have a CLM technology implemented? 32% say yes, 37% say no, 24% say we're looking for a new technology, and 7% say there are no current plans for a CRM. But after this presentation, maybe that will change.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Yeah, the joys of working from home. Me and my wife we both work for Conga. We're both in the same office in the basement. So if you hear a little background chatter, I apologize for that right off the bat. But I think we all kind of understand how that goes. Yes. So we just want to make sure that we tailor this correctly. We can kick over to the next slide. And then I have a second poll here, just about with collaboration. What department do you most collaborate with? Is it sales, procurement, finance, all or other? And depending on the size of your team, this could be very varied. It can be, you might not ever interact with sales, or you might only interact with procurement or finance, just depending on your role. But the answers will help me kind of figure it out.
Folks, let us know, I'm interested in hearing what your CLM use cases are, what your typical use cases, if it's with sales, procurement, or other. It's really interesting. In my own organization, we don't have a CLM. And, if we did, it would really be with procurement would be my number one, collaboration group. So I'm interested to hear what everybody else's experiences are, and any advice you have in that regard. So back to you, Kyle.
Sure. It looks like we got about 64%. That's pretty good. So it looks like 32% is sales, 11 is procurement, 8% finance, and then a lot of you guys out there, jacks of all here, 47%. I like that. I like the cross cross functionality. Okay, so let's kind of dive in here. We'll do a quick overview of contracting process that as in-house counsel, we're all pretty aware of, but more on with emphasis of what teams are you collaborating with at each stage. Off the bat, we're doing the preparation. That's mostly sales, generally, especially here at Conga. That's all Derek kind of handles all that stuff. But there is a little bit of a combination of booking policy through finance, sales ops, and making sure that the expectations are set based on what the deal is going to be, and then also our no-go areas for negotiating that initial contract afterward. Derek, could you add a little bit there for a second?
Yeah, so this is primarily where folks like myself are highly involved. So when it comes from, kicking off a contract, ensuring that I'm not being a middleman running back and forth between my sales team, my leadership, deal desk, sales operations, any and all in between, to just have a more streamlined process to know where my contract is at. So I'm not bugging Kyle left and right about if he's made the updates yet for redlining, just making it a smooth, more efficient process, streamlining for all the departments that can be involved.
Perfect. Yeah. And then once that he's got it down, he's got the customer ready to go. So it's time to author the contract. If you're using CLM, that's generally an automatic process. There's not a whole lot involved there, but it still involves getting sales ops to maybe generate the document, and then the legal team to get that over to you as well. Once the agreement is sent over to the customer, we've got negotiation, which also incorporates the approvals. A lot of us, if you have multifaceted teams, different departments, legal's not always making all those choices. If it's a commercial issue, if it's a net term or an uplift or anything like that, you got to get the buy-in from those individual stakeholders. So those kind of are intertwined together. Once all that's worked out, everything's approved, both parties are happy. Now we're talking about execution. How are we actually getting it signed? You do the whole battle of not your e-sign, my e-sign, and you sign first, not me, which is always a fun time. But it gets done, and that usually incorporates your sales ops. Someone, probably the sales member himself, the AE, probably handles that too, depending on how large the company is. Then we get to the central repository, which is kind of not so important up front, very important in the back end. All of your recurring revenue is going to be based on the data that is in that central repository. Where's it at? What version is the final version? What were the versions, just in case there's any questions? So we get it, the repository, where everything is. You got the clean version. Now we're talking about amendments. Things change, there's new regulations. We get new data regulations all the time. Or a government entity passed a new statute. There's always a reason or a way. Maybe something was missed in the original drafting of a document that needs to be added now. All kinds of different stuff can happen. So amendments are always key. Those often involve a lot of different departments as well. Maybe procurement has different things that they need to add to the agreement. Maybe finance has different things we need to add to the agreement. So we always need to have that that amendment process readily available. And then the final piece, regular audits. And if you run any type of subscription service, like Conga is a subscription service, or any residual contracts after the main agreement, those audits become really, really important. That data that you have, hopefully in a CRM or some type of system, lets your renewal team know, when the dates are, what the uplifts are, all those net terms, finance, that's all combined. If you're doing professional services work, we need to know if that original agreement contained the terms that necessitate those service. If it's separate, if it's the same, maybe the deal was inked on the 31st on the end of the month and you didn't have time to include that stuff. So you just say, you know what, if we do services, maybe we'll pass that to another time. So that audit data, it's got to be somewhere, it's got to be reportable, it's got to be clean so that you can do things with it. Checking the SLA if you have service levels. Are there insurance requirements? And then, down the road, what is your overall risk profile? What as a whole, or even as an individual agreement, how, where are we on that scale? So that's kind of an overview of the contracting process that everybody kind of understands. Derek, do you have anything here?
No, I think it's great. It's just, you could really just, nail it on the head there with this, just combining an end-to-end process for organizations to make sure that we're being efficient as we can. We all have different bandwidth and what's going on in our day-to-day lives, and want to make sure that we're getting things done across the finish line, hopefully not scrambling too often on the 31st, although it does happen sometimes. But no, fantastic, Kyle.
So we do have a quick question in the chat here. Did the legal team or procurement lead the CLM selection process? We got lucky. Conga, we do CLM. It's one of the many products that we sell. So our legal team drove the implementation of the CLM. I will say that because we like to use it. Once you use a CLM product, it's kind of hard to go back. Coming from private practice, I still had like practice management software, but nothing at all to the extent that Conga is, or even just any large in-house corporation's going to have very robust systems, CRMs, data that's just huge. And you need something to corral that all together. So yeah, so here we just have pitfalls to avoid while contracting, and I'm not going to read all of these. You guys are pretty good at that, but just some key points. I think one of the big things that we run up against and one of my pain points. So the thing that I hate the most about being in-house counsel and working commercial sales is telling sales reps no. I don't like being the guy who somebody's been working it for a month and we get to the very end and it's absolutely outside our risk profile. We can't take it. That's the worst thing on the planet for me. A lot of that kind of comes with number one, it's just, a lack of understanding from either side on what exactly is being sold, what the products do, and those expectations that are set in our contracting process. What is our risk profile? What are our no-go areas? That's the worst for me. Luckily, our CLM, and I'll explain this in depth later, our CLM kind of takes that mostly out of the equation for me. So it's actually really helped my anxiety. So that's a positive. 2, 3, legal team being involved late. Everybody's seen that. The wrong stakeholders. Finance doesn't know about a net term, or renewals team doesn't know about the removal of auto renew, something like that. The security department doesn't know that they scrapped the data protection addendum, things like that. And contract terms, not focusing on risk allocation. All of this stuff leads to protracted negotiations. Having all those ducks in a line, all of your approval processes, all the stakeholders fully together, that's what brings that together from our side. And it's always easy to blame the other side that they take forever. But if you're not returning a document quickly, then you can't really expect somebody else to do the same thing, regardless of the size of the corporation.
Kyle, if I may, one thing I would add on to there as we look at some of these pitfalls to avoid, they're also really good learning lessons. You don't just adapt the CLM, all these are automated and everything's, crystal clear, perfect, right? I take some of these into consideration, kind of looking at some of these aspects to maybe make my legal team's life a little bit easier, identify and understand what areas can I vet out in an evaluation to understand, to maybe not have you break my heart on the 31st at the end of the quarter, right? We want to avoid getting to that point if possible, but really great learning lessons. And it's a collaborative environment. I know we're going to touch on it a little bit, but making sales, legal, finance, procurement, whoever else is involved, just speak the same language and be on the same team to win together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And that all living together, that just plays into, 8, 9, 10, making sure that relationship is healthy, that the handovers are done, that customer's happy, there's not a delay in between the sale and implementation, and that everything is covered on the back end, that you have good, clean data, reportable data that you can action upon, that you're not missing renewals, you're not missing contract value left on the table. So let's avoid all 10 of these if you can. Sometimes it's not possible. 4 is a little tough. You do what you can. So this contract value. This is, I'm going to touch, again, I keep saying data, and it's so important. What a CLM generally does for you is lets you have just an insight on everything that's going on, all your touch points, all the things that are important. Without that CLM, sometimes you miss things in the drafting. I'd love to say I've never made a mistake, but it does happen. Or you're in a position where you just have to. That's the only way to move the deal forward. So you've got to have a hard termination date on an MSA. It might be, regulatory, statutorily required. So if you have that hard termination date, but it's not written anywhere, it's not collected or in a clean place that you can report upon, then we come up on the renewal, it's the 31st, and then suddenly finally realizes that the agreement terminates. And so now you got to whip out a brand new amendment real quick. And then with that amendment, it opens the door to, what are further negotiations? What else is on the table now that we're already talking? So that clean data, that reportable data, you just got to have vision into all of that. Sometimes your agreements are legacy. Sometimes things in there that you would never contract now are definitely there. Again, just clean data. How do we make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row for those future renewals, to not leave any of that revenue on the table?
Awesome. So now we step into how can a CLM help with collaboration? So we've gone over the overall contracting process, some of the different teams that can be involved, and the best practices and mistakes to avoid. So now let's take a deeper dive into, how is a CLM going to step in and help in this aspect within your business? So one of the first major wins from adopting a CLM, you're going to look at a centralized repository. So beforehand, maybe in previous lives or before you adopted a CLM, you could be looking at downloading, hundreds of contracts and data onto your desktop or having a disjointed SharePoint. We want to step in and alleviate this poor data hygiene by organizations moving onto a centralized version control system. From there, we look at how to track the physical changes made throughout the entire contracting process. So we want to ensure that the users involved comply with the company policies when building and negotiating these contracts, so that this way, not only are contract obligations met on time, but we now have a standardized approach to this workflow and version control to always know where a contract is in respective to its unique contract lifecycle. And then lastly, we're looking at how to efficiently communicate outside of the contract. And we want to drive business results we're aiming for now that we have the visibility into these contracts, both from a pre and post execution lens. And this is really going to help improve the terms and needed changes, along with staying ahead of milestones like auto renewals and price adjustments, for examples, on some of your vendor contracts. And we got another poll. Kyle, I'll kick it back to you.
Certainly, yeah. So this will kind of help too. I know that a lot of different industries, that regulatory background can be a little more harsh. There's a lot more things that need to be attached to, say, finance, healthcare. You got HIPAA. A lot of European banking laws are now including things. There's GDPR, all of that stuff. So what is the industry that your organization sits in? We got technology, healthcare, financial services, manufacturing, and then other.
And hey, Kyle. So a couple of things. We got in the chat, we have, somebody from the energy sector. We have Dana from entertainment. Dana, we have, I think it's Andy from who's a non-for-profit. Talking about Conga, is there, I'm sure that your solution works for many, many industries. Is there any, is there any maybe 3 or 4 that, you're particularly strong in?
We kind of cover everybody. We have different, so Conga has a lot of different contract lifecycle management tools. We have standalone tools for people who don't have CRMs. And then we also have very robust CLM tools that are on Salesforce, and then also any other CLM. We're launching a platform here soon that'll interact with anybody. It's API based. So we do document generation, e-signature. We really try to cover the spectrum from small and affordable to, your huge players. And we also do contract quoting and pricing, which is also massive. So we're all over the place. Conga can fit in any organization. Composer, our document generation tool, and I'm not even a sales guy, but I just use the tools, and I know that they work, and I like. But there's lots of stuff. You could use Conga to do contract management on a very small shop just as easily as you could use Conga to work in a very large shop.
Awesome. So going back to our poll, we have about 39% into tech space or technology space, 13% in healthcare, followed by manufacturing, then financial services. And then we have a few people, in the chat chiming in. Thank you for, chiming in. Letting us know. Back to you, Kyle.
Sure. Derek, do you want to
Yeah, one other thing I would add on to that, some of the language we like to use when we're talking to customers or prospective customers is everyone has a revenue lifecycle journey, and it's going to look different for every organization. So yeah, there's a lot of organizations in the technology, healthcare, FinServ space, but as some of the comments have said, non-for-profit, entertainment, everyone has their own spectrum of what it looks like. And it's adapting to make sure that when you are maybe implementing CLM for the first time, that you understand what your vendor can accomplish and how that's going to fit your specific model. So yes, we do have definitely some more within certain industries, but it definitely does not have a limit. We're able to accomplish a lot of areas that Kyle talked about, whether that be on top of a CRM like Salesforce, pulling data from your ERP, existing without a CRM in place for that day, whatever that means, we can start to look into that and understand how could that make an impact within your business and scale that to the maturity that your organization is heading towards.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. All right, so let's get a little deep here, and I'll tell you a little bit how Conga uses our CLM to handle these three types of agreements. And these are agreements that I use a lot. That the majority of our agreements are NDAs, just because of prospecting. When we're trying to talk to a customer, we're going to want an NDA. They're going to want an NDA, and regardless if that turns into a sale at the end of the day, we all hope it does. But we're going to have an NDA. That is our easiest spectrum, or on the spectrum of complexity in CLM with approval workflows and redlining negotiation. That's the easiest side. And then on the right-hand side, I think it's right for you guys too. Yeah, it is the MSAs. And that is our most complex. So I can let's talk about how you can utilize CLM to leverage these to make sure that your legal team, us, in-house counsel, how are we what's our best use of time in each of these three buckets? So for NDAs are simple. If you've got a mutual NDA that your board or you wrote and you're fine with it, that can be automatically generated by your sales team. So the way we do it is the rep themselves. This is fully self-service unless there's a problem. So the rep can generate the agreement or just send over a stock pre-signed NDA. If the customer would like to has any red lines for that, if it's a mutual NDA, it generally means that they have their own paper and that's a requirement for them. So once they get that back, that's added to the agreement record, and then the rep can ask for approval. That approval is automated and comes to the legal team. We have a grid that shows what's in the queue, and then we can make those red lines, send it back through CLM to the rep, and then send it back out for signature. So it's fully self-service, unless there's a little bit of tweaking done, because NDAs, there's not a whole lot to talk about. Pretty fast, pretty simple, only one approval, and which is legal, which is nice. The second bucket is professional services. And if you are Conga Professional Services, we implement our products. We're not a partner. We don't implement anybody else's products. Those implementations can be very, very easy out of the box. They come with a stock accelerator or a plan that is it's not really editable. You get eight of this or 10 of that, and it's wrapped into a bucket, and it's a short engagement, and they're relatively cheap because they're standard, they're stock, they're off the shelf. Those are self-service by the professional services representative as well. So they can create the agreement inside it. So we use Salesforce, right? So we can create the agreement type, which is the professional services agreement, the statement of work, the SAO. Once that's created, they can generate it automatically. They don't need any legal input, and then that's sent out. If there's a problem, again, like the NDA, they can submit it for approval. The approvals send it directly to the legal team in a queue, and we review those and send them back out. That's the easiest part. We also do custom builds, big projects, lots of work, lots of effort, lots of paper. Those are a little different. We use a combination of automatic approval, but we also use a gatekeeper. We have a deal desk for professional services where a member of our team sees whatever is in the custom SAO. They figure out, well, they know because we've done them so often, they know what the requests are and then what approvals are required. Does it need to go to a VP? Does it need to go to finance? Does it need to go to legal? Is there any number of approvals that you could set up? And our gatekeeper takes these custom built statements of work, and routes them to where they need to go. In the morning, I get an email. I open the email and it has a link of the agreements that I need to do. And those are all through CLM. The link takes me directly to the record, which contains the document, all the red lines. I can approve and deny, and I don't ever actually have to talk to the representative. It sounds like it's not collaborative, but the point is we're collaborating with standard rules and we're cutting down on all the unnecessary interaction back and forth. I don't need to hop on a Teams call. I don't need to send a bunch of emails. I get one email in the morning or throughout the day, and it's also in a grid. So that's at any rate. So the gatekeeper does that until that's a final document, and then the gatekeeper sends that out for signature. So that's the middle. We got somebody actually looking at each document along with automated approval processes to make the whole system work. And then on the far end of the spectrum are MSAs, which are wholly automated. And this is where clean data comes in. In our current workflow, if there are no changes requested, the system CLM will generate the link for our online MSA. If red lines are requested, our booking policies slide in. And if the opportunity meets the booking policy, that red line request is automatically approved. The document is automatically generated, customized for the customer, and then the rep themselves can send it from CLM. I'm not touching anything. I don't have to do anything. The rep, or once the customer gets it, they respond, they do the red lines, they can respond to their email, and that comes directly back into CLM. The CLM merges the two documents. So even if I don't have track changes on, which I generally don't, because everybody always turns it on when you're an attorney to see what's happening, the system will automatically notice changes that are not marked. So I get a notification, hey, this has all been approved, and now there's a document that needs to be redlined. Using our tools, I can redline that without ever going to the agreement record. I can redline it, send it back, and it'll approve through the approvals to let the rep know that it can go back out. Now, if it comes back and we're using smart clauses or smart fields, which any changes done to those separate clauses, those individual authorizations are routed to different departments. So if there's a change to, say, net terms, those are routed to finance. I don't have to do anything. The rep doesn't have to do anything. It happens automatically. If there's a change to renewal things, the auto renew, removal of that. So all of your separate departments are all included in the approvals process if there's a change to the document. It's pretty great. It's hard to do, and it takes a while. Like you got to implement it, and a lot of people are on a journey of that implementation. But when it's up and running, fully working, it's fantastic. So that's the end. It's full automation, full metrics, and because all those fields are smart and the CLM record knows what all those are, we can report on all that. We know that the data is clean. We know that when it comes up for renewal, what the terms are, what the notice periods are, is there termination issues, uplift caps, all of that is right there and ready to go. It's fantastic. So that's the far end. So we've got easy peasy over here in NDAs, and the far end are MSAs. And happy to answer questions about any of that at the end here. So I think let's move on to the next one. I think I'm gonna kick it back over to you, Derek.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for painting that picture, Kyle. I wanted to focus in here and take a look at a CLM Conga customer, Equinix. So they're in the digital infrastructure ecosystem, and they were looking for a way to solve their internal contracting problems. So they came to Conga with a lot of friction in their organization and numerous manual processes. On top of that, along with a long sales cycle that was partially due to some inefficient approval processes and some headaches around keeping up with multiple contract versions at a time. They also very heavily relied on their attorneys to draft documents on a one-off basis that was causing inconsistent messaging along with company branding. So with all those pain points, then comes Conga and steps in. So after Equinix adopted Conga CLM, they were able to reduce their cycle time from 14 days down to an amazing 90 minutes. Talk about a difference in terms of what they were looking at. So they smoothed out their contracting process by eliminating duplications of data entry. They standardized their templates, and of course, took advantage of Conga's robust approval engine. So Equinix is a really strong organization that is a poster child for implementing Conga CLM, eliminating friction and increasing throughput. So as we start to look at adopting a CLM within organizations, A big perspective to notice is that this is no quick and easy project by any means. We know that intimidation can come along when you undergo an opportunity like this, which is why in order to successfully transform your business with contract management, it really does require taking an internal look at your organization to understand what your own stages of CLM maturity look like. So in the majority of most CLM transformations, we want to start off with the inner part of the circle, starting with a repository. Kyle talked about earlier on that not so important up front, but super impactful towards the end. And so we want to start getting these key data points inside and adopting a record-based platform with the needed insight and reporting. Moving on from there, we start to expand and look at identifying what your unique process looks like. We want to add a structure that will aid the supporting teams to participate in the requesting, generation, approval, and viewing workflows. From there on, we then move into automation. So we want to use the data that's being captured to automate additional manual tasks and drive further efficiency across the business. Maybe there are some other areas that are more of a phase one on day one that could step in for further automations as you look to scale and grow. Then it's also extremely important to understand other technology integrations that you already have within your ecosystem. So you're going to have other tools within your stack that CLM is not going to replace. And it's really important to align on making sure that these different data tools seamlessly flow into one another across these different systems. Kyle mentioned earlier, Conga uniquely does have open APIs across the board. Other organizations do as well, but it's important to make sure that you're asking those questions to know that after the project is launched, other areas are going to come in for a seamless process. And finally, we want to deepen the understanding around analytics. So we want to offer a complete point of view on your customers, your internal teams, and the wider business entirely to have all of those lenses tell a story to understand what's happening throughout these processes, where are things getting bottlenecked, how can we improve additionally to just continuously advance the efficiency that you're driving for your business. So it's to kind of wrap up this slide, it's very important to understand that not all of this for organizations may happen right away on day one. Some might be a combo of 1, 2, maybe even 3, but I challenge you in your business to understand where and how your CLM will help you start, grow, and scale throughout your organizational maturity. It's hard to adopt a solution that might only solve a couple areas for 1 or 2 years. Really take into consideration what's our 10-year plan within an organization after we make this type of digital transformation.
Yeah, I mean, at Conga's even we're on that transformation too. As our products develop and as we improve them, we're at the same as our customers. We're moving right along that train, trying to make things better for ourselves in the same manner.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. To kind of play off of that, right? We talk about the stages of what that looks like. Now let's start to look at, what a CLM evaluation process can actually look like. So how does that really take place? Well, in order to fully understand what your needs are, you want to look at understanding the current process that you have in place today. What's in the winning category, what's in the losing or painful category, and taking those learnings and start exploring the market of the different CLM platforms. And from my previous point, understanding the path to integration with your existing tools already in place. All of that together is going to help lead you in a much stronger evaluation process of what's going to make the most sense for your business. And then we can get the next slide. Awesome. So here we see an example of a hypothetical project timeline could look like once you're working with a vendor. Set yourself up for success and establish a mutual success plan. Super important, both from a vendor side and from a buying side. You want to understand the areas that are important to check off in what order to successfully launch a CLM implementation that makes sense for your specific organization and where you envision yourself really starting, advancing to, and ending once everything would be, up and running in a perfect world. So really now, as we kind of bullet point these out, here are some quick top 5 ways to secure adoption of the CLM that you choose that we wanted to share. So as I alluded to on the previous slide, you want to identify a success plan to keep not only your team accountable, but your vendor accountable as well, to make sure that you're working together with a vision of what you're aiming to accomplish. You definitely want to create your own team, own the project, and understand who owns what responsibility to know when other parties step in. We all have our own bandwidth of what we're working with. We want to make sure that we're supported from our peers around us in these types of larger projects. You also want to ensure that you have training and enablement taking place for new hires, not only for people that are, coming on board, learning the system for the first time, but also just reliable referencing. We're human, we forget things. We're not going to memorize a system as soon as it's implemented. So you want to have areas that you can go back, relate to, maybe of other organizations. Like Conga, for example, we offer an advanced certification process. So if you want to get certified in Conga CLM, for example, that is possible. I'm sure organizations offer the same as well. And you want to track your feedback. Understand what areas require more help and lift throughout the process, because we're going to need to ask for help once in a while. So make sure that you understand how the feedback is progressing as you start to advance through this implementation. And lastly, for that matter, set up a cadence for a health assessment. Maybe at first that looks like a monthly or quarterly assessment, maybe even bi-weekly, depending on who was all involved. But ensure that you have the relationship with your vendor so that you keep the strong adoption on the right roadmap. Check in 6 months after the fact, check in a year after the fact. Don't just go through a process and don't have alignment on understanding that after the implementation is done, that they're still going to be there to help you to understand how you can improve that CLM throughout your maturity journey. And with that, Kyle, I will pass it back to you for our key takeaways.
Yes, key takeaways. If you're thinking about implementing CLM, be proactive is probably the best way to sum that up. As an attorney, we're in the thick of it. Your process is not, it might not be broken, but it's difficult. There are things that could be fixed if you just took the time to do so. And implementing a CLM is kind of one of those things. If you have resources, if you have like an ops person, we have a legal ops individual, and she drives the majority of all the changes for us. So if you can get somebody in the position to spearhead those things, it really, really helps out. But once the idea is out there, make sure that everybody's on the same page, because not everybody does the same thing. I don't work with procurement, so my needs are definitely different from other team members on the Conga legal team. Us all being aligned as a Conga team, as a legal team, is very, very important. We needed to work for all of us individually and as a group. But then even more than that, you can't make changes inside of a CLM without having your other stakeholders involved as well. You've got to have your finance, procurement, partners, professional services. Everybody needs to have input and aligned to make sure that it's a fluid process that everybody can enjoy and everybody can use, and it brings value to the company, because that's what we really want. And one of Conga's key tenets is customer first. Like, we want the experience for the customer to be the best that we could possibly have. Using a CLM, making sure that these transactions at the first part, in the first deal, and also the renewals and anything else down the road, is as smooth and as possible we don't need hiccups. We want everything to be on time, perfect, correct, the correct data every time, improve that customer experience. That is the goal. Those are the key takeaways. I think that's about all that we had prepared. So we do have some time for some questions. I see one in the chat. How did it work offlining the CLM tool Equinox had in place in implementing Conga? I don't specifically know. Yeah, I'm not, without being part of PS, I couldn't give any specific details there. I'm not even sure what CLM they use, or if they had one prior. I would assume they did.
Yeah, I was looking at Kyle, and actually I just went and double checked some internal data to see if I could pull that. I wish I was the rep that closed Equinox. That was for my time here at Conga. But knowing just from some of the data points that were in the case study, a lot of them speak to me that a lot of manual processes, there most likely was not a CLM in place before. But it's not uncommon to come across businesses that have a very outdated CLM system that might have been there since the earlier late 2000s. And really what that looks like is kind of to the point that I described in some of the top 5 takeaways on my side, were around understanding what that current process looks like today, what is okay getting done right now, and what do we really need to change and why, to put together a really strong business use case around, because anyone that adopts a CLM, you got to go up to your executive team, you have to put together a business case to validate for the budget, and understanding, what's the return on investment we're actually going to see from this type of project. So that's where personally I work to challenge my customer to have to work together with the responsibility of understanding, how are we going to get this done together? What is really going to make that impact for your business so that we can actually present that case, know where the lift is coming off. If there is some custom work that is done inside of that to match current workflows from a previous tool, we want to have that open, transparent conversation to understand how it's going to look, and it's going to set you up for the best success possible. So thank you, Dana, for that question.
Awesome. So I want to just say first, thank you to Derek and Kyle. I have a few more questions, and I'm curious, like, what are you seeing? It seems to be a tough economic climate, but maybe it's not a tough economic, like everything, like a Jekyll and Hyde financial outlook, it seems, in the economy today. What kind of companies are coming forward and, looking to implement CLMs? Is there any traits, any industries, any like inflection points where, it starts to make sense? And I'm curious, for the audience to maybe reflect, maybe they're seeing these inflection points too.
Sure, Derek, if you want to kind of talk about the customers that you kind of deal with, and I can talk about the larger deals that I really work on.
Yeah, so for sure. So from my experience and what I've seen with customers looking at a CLM journey to implement into their organization, it's always a plan, right? You don't just, I like to make the analogy, you don't just wake up one day and decide you're going to buy a car. You're looking for something, you understand something's in place that you're identifying. So it's aligning with teams, understanding, what their timeline looks like and that type of roadmap, and just diving in to just have like I mentioned earlier, a transparent conversation around why is this important? What do you need to make a change? And how can we work together to get there? So as far as industries that have been, in my experience, seen a lot around HLS, financial services, technology, manufacturing as well has been a big one for me. But like I mentioned, everyone's process is a little bit different. So just starting to understand what is unique about their business and that industry, and how can we step in to help?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I echo all that, and even some of our larger deals, they are all trying to. They're getting that value in the back end. It is expensive coming up, but the time and effort saved from the legal team, and it flows down through it flows through the company. It's everybody benefits from clean data, smooth processes, and just removing the manual tasks that kind of eat up your day. If we could do it automatically, if we can give you that efficiency back, it's worth it. And that scales with the size of the corporation.
Awesome.
Another piece there is that, like, from legal departments specifically, they're being, not even just legal actually, but the departments that are being pushed to meet certain KPIs, which they haven't been able to in the past. So really just tying together to a business value, and where a technology can step in and help prove that value to the larger organization as a whole, of understanding, again, ROI, return on investment, what you're going to get out of a technology. Shai, I didn't want to step in. I saw another question. I would answer that, but wanted to, if you had something to share as well.
Yeah, go ahead. You want to tackle that next question?
Yeah. So Kyle, I'll ask your side here too, from professional services where you've worked with that. But question from Demetrius: how long does the whole process usually take from evaluation of the current system to the complete implementation of a new one? So great question. And if you think of that, it's really a two-part process. So it depends on the size of the business. Some of them can be, if they're really have identified, it could be a quarterly project. It could be throughout the year, 6 to 8 months. Larger organizations, sometimes that could be somewhere to a little over a year to 15 months. It really just depends on what that's meaning from the business. But going through evaluation, demoing the technology, aligning, of course, on commercials, understanding what that looks like from the business, getting the other stakeholders involved, making sure that you're multi-threading and bringing in the right executive sponsors from your group to tie in for that type of project, and aligning on an end date with that mutual success plan that we talked about earlier. From an implementation side, that can also depend. Is it out of the box standard? Are you working with some custom code and integrations that you need off of day one? Those can vary, but that's why organizations have acceleration packages, different types of implementations, whether that be internal with their own professional services or through a partner ecosystem. So that can vary as well. But I'd say in most cases, Kyle, I don't want to step on your toes here if you have something, but that could be anywhere from 8, 12, 16, 20 weeks, sometimes a little bit quicker, just kind of depends on where they're sitting.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Some of our accelerators are even as small as 2 weeks. So it can be done rather quickly. The pre-built stuff goes from 2 to I think 12 weeks, and then anything custom after that goes along that. Now, some of our larger corporations, it's not uncommon for a full build, like I was talking with the MSA workflow with 20 to 30 different approval workflows, different types of paper, all that, a bunch of agreements that can take longer, maybe a year or two, maybe not two, but it's not uncommon for it to be over a year for a very, very large corporation. 200 lawyers, that kind of stuff. So just to try to paint the picture.
Yeah, I'm sure. So last question, I guess when you're, working with a client, do you get is the whole company involved? Like, is there one point of contact, or is it, numerous different departments that you make sure are involved and have input and, that are, happy with the solution?
Well, for me, it's kind of interesting. I sit, if you're negotiating, if you're talking to me, it's a pretty big deal. I'm working with the legal team. I'm working with procurement. Our reps are on the side, usually a couple at this point. So there's a lot going on. We'll have finances always on the back end, ready to go. Usually we're very reactive. So there's always somebody that we can immediately get to from our side. And then I find that that's generally the case on the other side as well. We are very collaborative. We don't really want to, and I don't want to walk over anybody here, but we don't want to just deal with the wrong stakeholder. We want to get talking to the right people at the right time in the room, move it forward as a joint, as a collaborative experience. That's what I see anyway.
Awesome. Derek, same thing?
Yeah, from my side, it really looks at the teams involved around that are going to just, deliver that most value. So of course, when you're going through the first part of it, of course, you're working with legal, you're working with, a services team, but also working with what we have uniquely a business transformation team to help kind of build out the use case around how this is going to impact an organization. So what we talked about earlier is those check-ins for 6 months, a year. I named it. We do that too. Leading question, right? Like, we want to make sure that your organization is going to see the outcome that you're looking for. And that goes beyond after the signature. We want to make sure that you're going to have the value. We're going to stay with you. We want to champion the customer. Part of our values internally with Conga, to make sure that you are getting what you paid for and you're seeing the delivery that you're expecting to alleviate those headaches, make your bandwidth easier, make your life easier, right? Like, we all have a lot that we're doing day-to-day in work. We want to make sure that we can help solve for that.
Awesome. So we'll wrap up here. Any last remarks before we sign off?
No.
I would say, Kyle, thanks for just painting the picture. I think you and I will have to have a deeper discussion as well, just understanding how, legal and sales can always strive to work better together. But it's awesome hearing from your side of the house. Hope my value provided a lot to the crowd as well. But just thanks everyone for coming in and joining, and looking forward to, reach out. I'll add some of the folks on LinkedIn here that we can grab the names from the list, but just I really appreciate everyone's time today.
Awesome. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Conga, for a wonderful presentation. Really interesting to go a little bit deeper into the CLM world. And thanks everybody for tuning in.